So my name is Brian Pitchman. I am the Director of Strategic Innovation for the Evolve Project. And a lot of what I do is helping libraries and other educational groups bring themselves into technology and makerspaces. Um, but through that, I also have a master's degree in informational security. So I often get asked to give a talk or a presentation on IT security and what that entails. And so today our focus is going to be on personal internet security practices and things and tips and tricks you can do to make yourself a little bit more protected while you're using your internet at home, surfing the web, wherever you may be. I'll also tie in a little bit about some of the corporate level type of security and what they use and how we can manage some of their technology into our own environments at like little to no cost. So for me, again, my background also is in cybersecurity. I used to do all the fun little building a script and seeing what it does and seeing what kind of access I can get myself into. And so some of the stuff that I will show you today will be based on the easy to find scripts that are out there on the internet and how to protect yourself against those. But at the end of the day, there's lots of different cybersecurity threats and risks and things like that that are out there. And we want to make sure we understand what they are so we know how to protect them. And so our agenda today, we're going to open up and talk about what anonymity is, privacy, and everything in between. So when we talk about surfing the web or doing things online, we often want to discuss and have conversations about how do I make sure people don't know who I am. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to talk about tools and tricks that you can employ to help protect yourself. What it is, what does it mean to get hacked or breached? And then lastly, we're going to wrap up with how do we protect our environment. So I always like to joke and tell people, way back when the internet first was a thing, no one really knew you were who you say you are. You can be anyone you want on the internet, and it's very hard to figure out who you are. But today, the amount of tools that are out there to find out who you are is astounding. And it's really, really simple, even with like simple Google Analytics tools. If you go to my website, I can find everything about you from your age, your gender, your types of interests you like, how you went to my website, and where you left to go, the browser you're using, the computer you're using, and a few other little things. And that's all simple. Every website out there that uses some sort of website monitoring tool can gather all that info. So how do we make ourselves a little bit more invisible online? The most common tool that people talk about when they talk about anonymity is what's called Tor browsing or a Tor browser. All that is, it's a browser that connects to what's an onion network or onion routing. And at the very high level, all it is when you're accessing the internet through a Tor browser, it's like Chrome, you get routed between all these nodes. There's an entry node, and then you get bounced between all these relays until finally you get to where you want to be. The reason why it's a little bit more secure and protected is that all these nodes that are connected on the internet, they don't know where you're actually coming from and your ultimate destination. They only know the next hop in the chain. And so all these people that are running relay servers, they don't know who everyone that's out there. It's just they only know where they're going to send next. People use Tor to either bypass internet content filtering, being anonymous online, or to also gain access to what's called an onion website, which your normal browsers won't be able to load or access. But at the end of the day, if you want to be invisible online, what we want to try to do is hide what's called our IP address. Every time you go out on the internet, you're leaving a stamp, and this stamp is your IP address. So every time you go to a website, every time you do a shopping transaction, this stamp allows people to figure out where it occurred, who did it, and a lot of this confidential pieces of information, you can use that to get to. So people want to hide their IP address for a variety of reasons. So how do we hide, as we call an 800-pound gorilla? They say that the easiest is to use free Wi-Fi. You can at least hide your location. So if you wanted to be truly anonymous using the internet without people having too much history about what you're doing, use a free wireless network. And there's a caveat, and we'll get to that later. Using a secure web browser like Tor, using what's called a private VPN. Other people say go back to dial-up. Some of those useful tools that we have now aren't readily accessible while you're on dial-up. You can also use a tool called Kali Linux or Kane Enable to hack somebody else's wireless network, or you can set up like long range wireless antennas from one location to another. So when we talk about VPNs, there's lots of services that are out there. And what a VPN is all it'll do is when you connect to the internet, it encrypts your connection. So people won't be able to see what you're doing and where you're going. It's encrypted. At the same time, it helps mask your IP address. So the sites you're going to, they don't really know who you are because you're being routed through some random server, either halfway across the world or down the street. At the end of the day, if they were able to trace that, in theory, they should only be traced up to that server. Now, there's a caveat also with VPNs. So if you buy one of these services, the ones that are usually based in the US have to log every site you go to. So when we talk about privacy, that's probably not your goal if you want to use a VPN service that's going to keep track of where you're going. So just look at the reviews and make sure that people that say that they don't maintain logs of the sites you use. And that's one step closer to making sure that you're safe and secure. So when we talk about like VPNs, for instance, if you were to hit my website, I would be able to instantly find out where you are in the world, what browser you're using, et cetera, like we talked about earlier. But if I were to toggle myself to a VPN, all of a sudden I appear that I'm in London. If I chose my VPN server location as London, when you hit my website goes, yeah, this guy's in London. Everything's pointing there. And it moves on with its life. So that's one of the cool tricks about using a private VPN, other than the encryption piece. It helps mask that IP address that, again, allows people to identify who you are. So you wanted this cloak of invisibility, as we would call it. We have two things we want to do. We want to anonymize ourselves, so we can use the Tor browser to do so. And then if we want to protect ourselves, we would also use a VPN, and you can use them together. So you can encrypt your connection while you're on an already encrypted Tor browser, and you're just doubly protected. So that's one way to help protect yourself and your environment with people doing things and masking where you're going. So I mentioned earlier about free Wi-Fi. Sometimes you need a good alternative if you want to do something anonymously. But I always caveat, there's nothing ever 100% anonymous. All the tools I already showed you, there's still, if you tried really, really hard, and you made the wrong mistake, and that person you're trying to trace made the wrong mistake, you can find that person or find more about them. So when you access, for instance, if you go to a Starbucks and you access their free Wi-Fi, there's a good chance that Starbucks is tracking the website you go to. Not necessarily what you're typing in, but more so, hey, we have a lot of users using Facebook when they come into our coffee shop. At the same time, almost every single wireless router or network in the world, including the ones at your house, log the computer name that's being connected to. So if you have your phone name as your iPhone name and you connect to a Starbucks wireless, Starbucks knows, hey, Tim, you connected to our free wireless network today. Now they don't know who Tim is in the crowd, as it were, but there's a log of a Tim accessing this wireless network. So I always tell people, change your name on your laptops, devices, and things like that, and don't have it your common name. Either come up with a random characters or just call it iPhone. But this is like one step way to help make yourself a little bit more secure. I mentioned earlier about tools that let you hack other wireless networks. So we're going to talk about wireless encryption later. So if you have a weak wireless password or one that only requires a couple characters with no encryption, there's a tool called Kane Enable. Now, if you were to search for this, you'll most likely get a whole bunch of viruses because a lot of individuals have created Kane Enable lookalikes. So people would download that, they're not sure what they're doing, and then get a virus and everyone laughs. So if you find the right tool and the right software, what you're able to do is it can sniff a wireless network and then do what's called a brute force attack to log in, get the wireless key. And it basically all it is trying different encryption levels to figure out what that password could be. So that's Kane Enable. But in general, if you want to connect privately and you don't want like a history of things you're doing, the most obvious is when you're on a public wireless network or you're using a encryption tool to mask who you are, don't log into Facebook, because obviously if they ever do some backtrack digging, they can find out that, oh, Brian Pitchman accessed Facebook while he was trying to surf anonymously. Cool, now we figured out who that anonymous user is. So I always say, don't sign in anything personal when you're trying to have an anonymous lifestyle while using the internet. But if you do need to post something, obviously don't create anything that can be associated back to you if you're, again, wanting truly private and protected conversations. The other thing too that people will talk about is if you wanted another step in making sure, hey, everything that I do, I never wanted to be traced back to me, buy yourself a computer from a pawn shop or garage sale and pay in cash. And now you have a device that no one knows that you actually own. And it's just one step farther in, being more private and anonymous. Some really cool, easy ones for privacy. There's a service called 10minutemail.com. And all it is it gives you a temporary mailbox that's 100% anonymous, and it just disappears in about 10 minutes. So when you go to that website, it'll give you a random email essentially that works for 10 minutes. You can refresh it by clicking I need more time. This is really good for those websites that say, hey, sign up for a 10% off coupon, and you're like, I don't need to be spammed with stuff, but I want the 10% off coupon. Use the 10-minute mail service, get your percent off coupon, and you're good to go. When we talk about taking your computer and getting rid of it, or selling it, or giving it to someone else in your family, and you want to make sure that you wipe it for privacy reasons because you don't want anyone to find out what you're doing. Simply erasing the disk once isn't really going to do much. There's so many tools out there that allow you to recover deleted files. Recuva, for example, is a tool that if you delete a file on your computer, you can install this piece of software and you can recover it. Good chance you can, at least. So the trick is to make it more difficult to recover data is you overload your hard drive with garbage or blank data. And so if you have a Mac Doctor Cleaner or Eraser for Windows, if you install that, what it will basically do is it'll write junk files all over your hard drive and delete it, write it again and delete it, to make it really hard to recover anything, because at best, it's going to recover some of those junk files it created. Now let's talk about protecting ourselves. We talk about ourselves. There's a tools with IdentityGuard and LifeLock. They're not free, but what they do is it'll help monitor information that's on the dark web, for instance. So if your password was leaked out on the internet and they were watching it, they would tell you. If you wanted a free service, however, HaveIBeenPwned.com is 100% free. And all it does is it monitors your email address to see if it pops up on any leaked websites, and then it'll tell you about it. What's really cool is it gives you a really neat report of what happened, how it was compromised, and what to do. And then when we talk about passwords, use a password management tool like LastPass. Don't write your passwords down on Post-it notes, or don't be clever and on your iPhone create a note that's spelled passwords or spell it wrong so no one looks at it, and then put all your passwords in there. Because again, if your phone gets stolen, someone gets in and they want to be malicious, they can look at that and then instantly have access to everything. So using a tool like LastPass, which will encrypt your passwords with a password, will help protect your network or protect your information. So I always joke that it's really easy to figure out passwords, so don't name your passwords after your dog. So here's a screenshot of what Have I Been Pwned looks like and some of the data they provide. The other important thing, we're going to talk a little bit more about passwords later, but the other important thing is not to use the same password for everything. And I know you're like, everyone always says that, but it doesn't make any sense. And the simple reason is, if a website was hacked and all the passwords were taken, a hacker would buy those passwords. And then what they would do is they would say, hey, does Brian use the same password on Walmart? Does he use the same password on Google? And they're going to try everything they can across all the websites that are fairly common until they can log in, because they know most people use the same password for everything. So here's the biggest trick that I can share with you. You can make the same password for every website you use, however, change a character. So I have a base password that I use for every single website, but for Facebook, the last character is an F. Or for my bank, it's the letter of my bank. And so I do all that because now it's really difficult, because again, a hacker isn't going to look at this list and go, that's a random bunch of characters. I wonder which character is the one that the one that he changes each time. The exception to that rule is if you're doing like 1, 2, 3 at the end of your password, because then most people will try 4, 5, 6. The other thing to keep in mind is Google isn't always your friend. So just be careful while you're Googling. The results you get might not always be the results you want. So you can always check the mouse over the link. Google does a pretty good job highlighting if it's safe or not safe. But just keep that in the back of your mind while you're searching. For instance, every now and then, if you misspell the word Firefox and type in Google Firefox download, you're going to get a virus because someone's going to create an ad that isn't Firefox. So you go to it thinking you're about to download some really great browser, but it isn't the browser you wanted. Another great tool for yourself, it's called dual factor authentication. It sounds like it's a pain. All it means is when you go to log into a website, it'll ask you to give another authentication code or another authentication method. And so put it simply, if you're ever were hacked and someone took that password and went to a website and logged in, it'll then say, hey, we just texted you a code. Can you type in that code? And it's just one extra step to make it very difficult to get into your personal information. So dual factor authentication, if you see it, that's all it is. It's also called multi-factor authentication, or MFA or DFA for short. When we shop online, one of the other really nice tools that I use frequently is called Privacy. What Privacy is it gives you a virtual credit card that will only work on that specific website. And you can set thresholds of how much can be spent. For instance, if you're getting really annoyed that Netflix keeps on changing the price of your subscription and you want to cancel it, but you always forget to cancel every time they change it, you can create a virtual credit card for Netflix and say, hey, don't allow any charge over $15. So then next time when the prices increase, you're protected. At the same time, if you wanted to buy something from a website, but you weren't 100% sure how safe it was, you can use this to create a virtual credit card that you can then use. And if that site was ever hacked or it was fraudulent, at least they can't take that credit card and use it anywhere else, because again, that card will only work on that individual website. At the same time, all you have to do is you log into your Privacy account and there's a button that says disable card or pause card, and you click on it and the card can't be used. A couple other little tips and tricks. I always say only accept the people you know on personal and professional networks. There's a lot of scams that go out there where it's a fake username or a fake name. They try to befriend you. They have conversations with you. They learn about you. Usually it's AI driven or there's a bot behind it. And then, they make you click on a link. But there are times you get a link and you're like, I know this person, this link doesn't look safe. You can always reach out and ask. If you see a link that ends with bit.ly or tinyurl, always double check from the sender to make sure they meant to do that. However, if you weren't comfortable asking, or you didn't want to seem annoying asking every time they send you a link, here's 2 websites to try out. urlvoid.com will test to see if the website's safe, if anyone else has reported this website being dangerous. The other thing is, and I'm not really positive how to pronounce the name of their site, but Snapito. What it does is it'll take a screenshot of the page and send it to you. So you don't actually have to access that website from your own computer. You're going to use their service to do so. So if someone sent you a link that's with that URL shortener, like the bit.ly, it'll render it, find out where it's actually going, take a picture of what the website looks like when it loads, and then gives it back to you. If people are claiming to be you on social media, it's also a really good idea to get your account verified. And that's just an extra side piece of information. And again, dual factor authenticate all of your social media logins. A couple other sources as well. If you want to learn more about what the dark web and deep web is all about, there's the Reddit link. Google, while you think it's a free service, there's nothing free in the world. Just like Facebook isn't technically free. You have data about you that people will buy. So using a tool like DuckDuckGo, for instance, doesn't track the searches you make. So that's why if you ever notice, everything you type into Google search suddenly will also show up as an ad. Oops, looks like we're back. Sorry about that. I guess this is what happens when you talk about hacking and things like that. Let me reshare my screen. Cool. So as we're talking, and again, apologies for the service disruption. Looks like my internet cut out, so I'm running off of my hotspot now. But some of the common misconceptions that people talk about is I'm not worth being hacked. Hackers won't guess my password. I have antivirus software. or I'll know if I'd be compromised or breached. One of the big, and that's probably the last one, is probably the biggest misconception about hacking or knowing if you've been hacked or breached, because you won't know right away. The majority of hackers is when they compromise the data, they sit on it for a while. They'll wait a few years because the data becomes more valuable because people don't monitor it. They're not going to go, oh yeah, my stuff got hacked, I'm gonna go change all my passwords. They're going to keep quiet, sit on it, and then it'll probably be announced or released that all this information is being compromised. Because again, it's more valuable as people sit, because people are less likely to make a change, or they're going to forget they have those accounts. So if like Home Depot gets hacked again, those hackers sat on it for a while before they start using the information, because at the time it was hot. It wasn't worth touching because people might change their passwords if they notice anything weird. But if you wait a while, people forget. So understanding a breach and a hack involves a person or group gaining unauthorized access to a protected network. And a breach, on the other hand, is a release of confidential data. So a breach is usually done by accident, where someone will mistakenly send out information to other people. Also, if you have questions or anything like that, feel free to interrupt and ask. So one of my favorite little, I guess favorite's the wrong word, one of the neatest little hacks that I've seen in the last few years was through someone creating a Google Drive app. It wasn't actually and they named the app they created Google Drive. So then they sent people emails, and it was a very simple app. And all it did was it would take all of your information and then resend that its own little virus out, and eventually get access to read, send, and delete everyone's email account. So it was a really neat little tool that looked legit. But if you look at the senders or who's sending it as, you'll notice that it doesn't look 100% safe. Google has since fixed this type of breach, but I thought it was a very clever use of tools. When we do talk about hacking, they say the majority, which is about 90%, is 100% amateur. So it's people that find a script online and they will go run and use it. That's why people say it's very important to always keep your software up to date, because usually those updates are because a professional person that does it for a living, that tests things, finds the hack, they share what they did on the internet, and then those companies will then patch for it. If you don't patch, the people that are on the internet that read these blogs will then go, I wonder if that script will work for me, and get into those accounts. It's expensive for companies to deal with breaches. They say in the US, the average cost per person is like $10 to 30 person per infected individual of what they have to spend, plus all these court fees, fines by federal authorities, etc. So it's very expensive to get data breached. Another thing, one of the things that you can do to help monitor and track your information is looking at your connected devices. So what Google has done is they have a security page inside of Google that lets you see where your devices are connecting, tools you've given account access to. So at a high level, you can find out if someone's logging in as you and very quickly delete their access and then change your password. Amazon has a similar function as well, to look up and see where your devices are connecting from. So changing gears, what we want to talk about today is also protecting our home and our home networks and our home environments. So let's dive in. Why do people attack? It's always a really good question. They say that most people attack just because it's fun and it's malicious, because bad people do bad things. There's also the occasional financial gain, either for stock manipulation, getting paid, selling of information. When we talk about data theft, sometimes a hacker would hack an entire organization to get one piece of information. And other times it's to bundle a bunch of people together and sell. But here is the fun facts. If your account information, for instance, was stolen or hacked on the dark web, your social security to spy someone's social security number is only $1. The thing is, I usually have to buy like a bucket of social security numbers, and in that bucket, there's probably only a few, if any, that are legitimate or still in use or hasn't been fixed and protected. But in general, this is how much things cost. If you are a cyber criminal and you wanted to buy something, your information goes relatively cheap, which is sad, but that's kind of how everything works. In a corporate environment, this is the environment that exists. You'll have a storage rack with tons of wires, all these devices that are designed to protect information, route information. As information traverses across like a corporate environment, it goes through switches and routers and very specific paths that doesn't let conversations see other conversations. So at the end of the day, you have end users that are connecting across this entire infrastructure. And the reason why I want to talk about this is these are all the tools that are out there in a corporate level, and then we can discuss how do we add these corporate level tools into our own environment. So an outer defense, so protecting a corporate level environment from attacks, they use what's called a router or a firewall. Typically a firewall, they have a high-end firewall that protects you with what's called intrusion detection systems or protection systems. And all it does is either alert you or stops a threat from occurring. So there's attacks that go into your environment where people are trying to guess a password or bring down a network by sending a whole bunch of junk data. These things protect it. And you want to protect inbound and outbound traffic. There's a tool called Unified Threat Management that has, and it's an appliance-driven feature that has antivirus software, content filtering, all these layers of security that in order to get out or inside the network, you have to go through. So it's like almost like a computer for your network. Things that people attack in terms of, and again, we're going to use this corporate level to understand how people use personal level, is anything that has an external IP address is an attackable feature on a corporate level environment. Such as a website, any internal built applications. And then we have inside things like our file shares, records of patrons or users, whatever it may be, how we route traffic, and who and what is going where. Now here's the attacks. Now these are attacks that can occur in your own home. The first one's the man in the middle. And this requires someone on the network to listen to a conversation and what they can do. And by listening to a conversation, see traffic going back and forth. And what they can do is stop that traffic, take it, change it, and then send it back out. One of the cool, and again, I'm using the word cool because I was always intrigued by it. It's called DNS spoofing. And all that is if you have a computer set up, you build a fake website. So you can build a fake Facebook. You can make it look like Facebook has a login window and everything. So when people on your network go to facebook.com, you're going to end up going to my fake Facebook because I'm going to route that internet traffic to my fake Facebook page. From there, I can then capture that username and password and then send you along back to real Facebook, and you'll never know that I captured your Facebook account. There's the other tool called the denial of service attack, and all that is it's a barrage of data that's sent to a single service or an internet provider that eventually brings it down because it can't function. It has too much traffic. And then a simple sniffing attack. All that is just monitoring of data and traffic to see where it's going. And here's how easy it is to do. The bottom left is a tool called Kali Linux. What Kali Linux is, it's a software suite, or also called Backtrack. It's a software suite that has all these different feature sets. So if you want to do a denial of service attack, you click a button and it will help you send junk data. If you want to do DNS spoofing, you go to another section, hit a button. If you wanted to break into a wireless network, you can. So the tool is out there to help you learn to test if your network is secure. But at the same time, when we talked about those cyber joyriders making up 90% of the hacks that are out there, these are the same tool sets they use. So how do we protect ourselves? We're going to get to that shortly. In the top right is a tool called Wireshark. And this is a tool that you can install on a laptop, walk into a Starbucks and run, and you can see everyone's unencrypted traffic, zooming around what websites are going. If they're logging into an unsecure website, they can see the password that's being sent. So for my master's, one of the things that we did was we sat inside of Starbucks to find out what type of traffic people go to and what kind of data is out there. And it was kind of scary. Some people would access what's called a file transfer site or a place to store files unencrypted, and I was able to see their password clear as day. And then when we talk about corporate level environments or even our personal environments, we have what's called our internal defenses. And so that's, how do we route traffic to and from each other? Do we use software protect and those kind of things? So how can we do all those high level corporate level protection with our little wireless box? Let me go back a few slides. We want to be able to do all of these things and protect all these things with one little box. And here's some of the high level tips and tricks that I use. So again, I used to work in a library, which unfortunately we didn't have a money tree. And so I had to get very creative with how can we improve our security or change our security to make it better without having to spend, a whole bunch of money. So these were some of the tricks that we did. The simplest and easiest is always make sure that you are updating your software. Anything that needs a patch, anything that needs firmware, update it. Being on the latest and greatest isn't always the best because sometimes there's glitches, but if it's security driven, it's usually key and very important to make sure you do. I mentioned passwords. The complexity of passwords doesn't technically always matter, but the length of the password does. And so they say that if you make a long statement with random words that are funny to you, that's just as secure as the password, like I think that's supposed to be like trouble. It's just as secure as that with random letters and characters that most people can barely remember. And the reason for that is it's all about the encryption. So when you're using a password, you're encrypting your data with the session key, let's call it. And if people can hack that special key, they can find out all the information behind it. And so if you make that key really long, it takes longer to guess than a short one with random letters and characters. And the other thing is don't use Post-it notes. So part of my master's that I got, we had to go to our place of work. And so I was working at the library and we had to walk around the building and find out how many people write Post-it or how easy it is to hack into our environment. And unfortunately, it was very, very, very simple. I could look under the keyboard and yes, that's the spot that lots of people use for their passwords or the drawer next to them and occasionally on the monitor. These are all, and if you're looking at your desk and you're like, he's spying on me, I'm not, I assure you, that's just the common place that everyone else does it. So use a tool like LastPass to protect yourself. Do the password trick I talked about earlier. And these are all little tips and tricks that you can do to help protect yourself. When we talk about software, one of my favorite pieces of software that I've used for years, it's a company called ESET, and they have a package called Internet Security. And what that does is it has a firewall as well that can help monitor and protect you from those common threats. And it'll update the firewall. It's a software-driven appliance. So as you're using the internet, it'll prevent you from doing anything silly. The other really cool thing that I like about it is if your computer ever gets stolen, you can mark it as stolen. So if someone goes to their house, connects to their wireless, as soon as it does that, it'll take a picture with the webcam. And then since it's on the internet, it has that special IP address, it will then take that IP and send all that information to you. So you can then go, hey, I have their picture, I have their general location because they got their IP address of where they're at, and then you can send that to the police. When you're looking for protecting your computer and seeing if there's anything malicious on there, like anything from what's called a keylogger, which tracks the keys that you type, or something else of that nature, you can use a tool from Malwarebytes that you can run scans on regularly. The free versions works just fine. Just run the scan every now and then and you'll be okay. For more advanced things, if you had kids that were taking their laptops to school where you were traveling a lot, check out like just doing a LoJack on your computer. And there's another tool called BitLocker as well. It's based on Microsoft. What BitLocker does is it'll encrypt your hard drive. So if someone takes that hard drive out and puts it into a different computer, the hard drive will go, hey, this is not my original home, and encrypt itself, and it will need a key to unlock. Conversely, if someone's tried, if you had BitLocker enabled and they've tried the password too many times, it would also lock the computer and require them to put in a key. When we talk about content filtering, again, this is in a corporate environment, this is managed by a firewall. You can do all that with your special little wireless box. There's a company called OpenDNS. It was bought by Cisco a few years ago. They have a free product, and it's really hard to find now, I've noticed, because I was trying to find a screenshot to show you all. So there's the website for it down there. If you go to that page, you have what's called a family shield. And all it does is you're going to route all of your traffic to OpenDNS, almost like a VPN, but you're going to route all the traffic to OpenDNS, and OpenDNS will say, hey, this is safe. You can go to the website. You can also block content, so making sure that things are safe, doing the parental controls, blocking adult content, and it's really simple to do. This is how easy it is. You sign up, it'll say, hey, go to your wireless router. It'll give you a list of wireless routers even, and change your DNS address. DNS is your domain name service. All it is mostly this is usually managed by your internet service providers. Whenever you go out on the internet, your internet service provider will have a bunch of servers, and to speed themselves up, they'll know, hey, if you want to go to Google, it's this special IP address. There you go. To not use them, you would want to use OpenDNS. You take their address, which is 208.67.222.123. They're on the screen, and you throw them into your wireless router. Then you can route all of your traffic through OpenDNS instead, which will do their content filtering for you. It's very simple. So if you log into your wireless router, there's usually a spot that says domain name server address, and that's where you would go. Don't get automatically from internet service provider or ISP. Specify those addresses. And again, OpenDNS, if you go to the website, it'll be there. Your wireless router, two things to keep in mind. You always want to make sure your wireless network is protected. So in order to connect to your wireless, you want a password again. And again, this is to encrypt the conversations that occur on the network and prevent people from accessing it. Also change your wireless passwords admin account. So to log into the wireless router to change your wireless settings or change your wireless name or add a wireless password for that matter, change the default password. You want to know how easy it is to guess someone's wireless password? You don't even have to guess. You go to routerpasswords.com, you have a drop-down box, and it will tell you the default username and password for every single router that exists in the world. So always make sure you change them because the tools are there. There's a few other little tools that I'll talk about to help protect your computer, specifically to how to protect your kids' computers. So Microsoft has a feature, and it's called Family Protect. What it does is you would sign up at the website below with your Microsoft account, and then you would authenticate your computer to connect using Microsoft instead. But when you do that, you can do everything from setting screen limits to filtering content, making sure they're not playing games or looking at the right websites. You can get reports of what they've been doing on their computer. So how long were they typing up that PowerPoint they were working on all night long, or were they actually surfing the web on Facebook? And the other thing too is, depending if you have a Microsoft phone, even it can help track where you're going, or if you use one of their apps, you can help track and figure out where people are and geolocate them. If you don't have a Microsoft computer and you're an Apple fanboy like myself, they have parental controls as well. And it's very simple. You would create a user, you check what they can and cannot do, when they can be on the internet, what types of privacy is going to be restricted. If they can't access certain apps, you can disable them from installing things. Everything you can think and dream about, Apple has it very neatly organized and detailed. I gave a user link at the bottom that walks you through in granular of how to set up just the parental control part. The link at the top is more about setting up your Apple environment for like a family, and setting users to be children and preventing what they do all from a single interface. At the same time, when we talk about Google, if your kids want their own email address and they don't want to use a 10-minute email, Google has instructions on how to build an account for kids. So you can get a copy of every email they send and receive. At the same time, what you can do, if they have a Chromebook, you can also do everything that Apple and Microsoft can do, where you can set time limits, thresholds, what they can access, all through an interface. If you're looking for something a little bit more robust, that can work across, if your family has Apple products, Microsoft products, and Google products, what QO Studio does, you have to pay for it, unfortunately, but you pay per device, and it's like $60 a year, I think, for 5 devices. You can set time limits. You can even lock a device right from the app, so they can't log in or do something with their computer or their personal devices. And you can set up alerts, so if they're doing something they're not supposed to, you can get pinged for it. So that's QU Studio. I mentioned wireless networks earlier. This is a lot of technical jargon, but I'll simplify it the best I can. Never have an open wireless network because it's easy to log in and trace. If you're using what's called just WEP encryption, so if you go log into your wireless router and you see WEP and you have something in there, you're using the easiest to hack wireless network because, again, the less characters, someone just has to guess enough times to get in. And there's programs like Kn-Enable or Backtrack that can do all of it by a machine, so it's a lot faster. They say the most preferred method is WPA2-PS. So when it's WPA2 is the newest standard for wireless encryption. Then there's TKIP and AES, which is just another encryption standard. So doing the second to last one is the best option because it's the fastest, it's one of the most secure ones, and you're better off doing that because it's a lot harder to hack. I always tell people nothing's ever 100% hackable because it's not. But you can only do the best you can do to protect. And at the end of the day, most people are cyber joyriders. They're going to use a script, and most scripts don't work with these levels of encryption, but they do work with WEP encryption. So again, lots of technical jargon on the page. I left a link at the bottom. So if you wanted to go to that website, you can read all about it. But at a very high level, WPA2 with AES encryption is your best bet. Other people always ask me too when we talk about our own wireless network is, what is the guest network on my router? All the guest network is supposed to be designed for guests that go to your home. That's why it's called the guest network. It's not because it's not the router the network you give your kids because you think they're not going to use your internet as much. The trick with the guest network is you're able to block access to the rest of your environment. So every device that connects to a network, one device can see all of the other devices. If you had somebody come over, like a friend, for instance, and you didn't know what kind of junk they had on their phone when they wanted to connect to your wireless network, give them the guest one, and you would set the guest to block the ability to see the other network. So now what you've done is you put a divider. They can still get on the internet, but they can't see your family. They can only see whoever else is on the guest wireless network. So if you're, for instance, if you have a computer sharing photos and someone joins that guest network, they can see those photos. Or if you didn't want people to start streaming things to your Chrome TV or your Apple TV or your Chromecast, these tools can help prevent that. So just some general browsing rules to wrap us up for the evening. There's HTTPS. So when you go to a website, most browsers now actually will give you a big red flag if the website isn't secure. All the HTTPS means is that the owner of the website went through the trouble to identify who they are. They provided contact information to a security certificate registrar so they can validate this person exists. I mean, it's not a complicated process. It's literally an email they fill out, but it's a step in the right direction. There's varying levels. So if a website owner like Amazon, for instance, has to go a step farther, and they'll actually provide an address. They'll prove that they live there by sending in a billing address. But at the end of the day, HTTPS is a secure connection, and it's like this idea of trust. So when you're going to it, they cryptographically signed it saying, hey, this website is secure. Again, not everything is secure, but this website is secure, so people are on it. It's really difficult to see who's doing what. HTTPS isn't, however, a way to make sure they don't see your IP address. They will. Not all encrypted traffic is protected. So again, sometimes some of that gets through. It's the only guarantee is that when you're connecting to an HTTPS website, it's just between you and that server. And so it's essentially designed to help either protect web attacks or those man-in-the-middle attacks sniffing what you're doing. But again, it just helps prevent hackers from seeing what you're doing over the internet. It helps people from tracking some of your internet activity. But definitely an unencrypted HTTP website 100% reveals information about a user's behavior very easily. It's not very private. So if you see an HTTP website and they want you to put your credit card information in, 100% don't do that. At the very least, make sure it's HTTPS. always tell people that your security is only as strong as your weakest link. And the weakest link in every environment, whether that's your home, corporate office, Amazon, Google, the weakest link is always the employee or the user of said network. And so I always tell people that if you want to have a secure wireless or securest environment at home or internet at home, train people. So learn how to identify scam emails, understanding what a fake Facebook friend is, always being careful of when you're seeing links sent to you, whether it's on social media or you're searching and you don't recognize it or it doesn't look safe, trust your instincts, or use those tools like Snapit2 or URL Void to see if they're valid and safe. And then take as many webinars and free classes as you can to learn about these things. And at the same time, take that back and have open and honest conversations with your family. And so like, there's a good chance that your kids don't even know that the Prince Nigeria isn't their cousin and he doesn't have $10,000 to give them. As a fun little anecdotal fact, when I was younger, I was so mad at my mom when I told her that, hey, some princess, he knows me and my family, and he wants to give me $1 million. I'm gonna be rich. And my mom's like, that's not true. I was very mad at her when she wouldn't let me email them my social. Because I was like, I want that $1 million. Tell me my social, mom, I need this money. And I laugh at it now that I have degrees and all this experience with ethical hacking and things like that, that I almost fell victim to something as simple as that as a kid. And so it's possible and it's easy, and kids and adults are usually, and senior adults are usually targets. I have a colleague of mine who I was fixing her computer one day, and she comes into the office and she's like, hey, Brian, Microsoft's on the phone. They must know you're fixing my computer. And I was like, I highly doubt Microsoft cares. Let's find out what they want. And it was, a scam. The person's like, hey, can you go to this website? I'm from Microsoft and I need to install a package to fix your computer. Newsflash, Microsoft is never going to call you to fix something. And so these scams are always out there, but having conversations about the scams that exist is a good way to help kind of protect your network. And having these open conversations about, hey, you're not going to become a YouTube star because someone emailed you, or there's a famous prince that has money for you. That doesn't exist, unfortunately. So have these conversations, and be honest. So I'll wrap up with any questions. I will be posting these slides on SlideShare, which I should have put into the link here. So I'm going to add my SlideShare URL to the PowerPoint slide really fast. Spell it right. There we go. So I'll upload this later. You'll be able to go to SlideShare, see the slides. Feel free to use them, download them, edit, give your family a presentation. I don't care. The content's yours to use. In terms of questions, feel free to type. There is one question. The question was, does Best Buy still offer the computer setup service called Geek Squad? I'm trying to install additional security software on my computer and link my dual desktop monitors for use. I believe they do. I don't know, to be honest. I'm pretty sure they do. They still have a service. Somebody replies with, yes, that service does exist. But to be honest, there's YouTube videos for everything. And if you're buying a software, what I would do is have the software vendor help you. And the software vendor will most of the time actually help you install it. So call for support and say, hey, I bought your software, can't figure out how to install it. It's their job to make money, so they'll help. Are there any other questions about anything we covered? Anything you want to get more into? Cool. Well, there's nothing else. If you're watching the recording, feel free to reach out if you have questions or comments. I'd be more than happy to help or point you in the right direction. If you see something you're not sure what it is, or you want to talk about more about internet security, feel free. There's my LinkedIn, Twitter, and again, my email. And thanks again for having me. And sorry about our internet outage we had.
That's okay. Thanks everybody for joining us. Make sure to take a look at our website, the calendar, see what else that we have going on. Thank you again, Brian, for meeting with us and hosting this webinar.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Yeah, have a good one.
Well, there's a question about if it can be viewed at another time. I believe you can watch your recordings on your Facebook page, yeah?
Yep, on the Facebook page, they can be rewatched at any time.
Perfect. All right, bye everyone. Enjoy
Thank
the
you,
rest of your
everyone.
evening.